Did the NFL just send a message that it still fears confident, outspoken black quarterbacks? That's the question now, echoing across sports talk shows and fan forums. Because when Shedeur Sanders, the son of NFL legend Deion Sanders, a proven star at Colorado, and once projected as a top 10 pick, fell all the way to the 5th round of the 2025 NFL Draft, confusion wasn't limited to fans. Analysts scratched their heads, scouts contradicted themselves, and even former players started to ask what was really going on. And then came Johnny Manziel. Yes, that Johnny Manziel, the once polarizing Cleveland Browns quarterback. The man labeled too flashy, too cocky, too bold for the old NFL. He stepped out of the shadows, not just to defend Shedeur Sanders, but to warn the league that something deeper is happening behind closed doors. On his Glory Days podcast, Manziel didn't hold back. He drew comparisons between Shedeur's situation and his own rocky path, and he questioned why NFL front offices seem so eager to reward safe, quiet, yes-man quarterbacks, while punishing those who dare to show personality, leadership, and confidence. For Shedeur Sanders, that difference in perception may have cost him millions, a first-round spotlight, and immediate respect in NFL circles. But here's the twist. Manziel isn't just defending Shedeur out of empathy. He's warning the league that ignoring outspoken, charismatic leaders is more than just bias. It's dangerous. Because if Shedeur gets his chance in Cleveland and thrives, the league will be forced to reckon with how badly it misread him, and how often it misreads players who don't fit the mold. Let's rewind to the draft. It was supposed to be Shedeur's night. After all, he was the face of Colorado's rebirth under his Hall of Fame father. His resume spoke louder than any scouting criticism. Over 8,700 career passing yards, 67 touchdowns, and a highlight reel stacked with throws against every Power 5 defense. Draft analysts projected him anywhere from the mid-first round to the top 10. He had the numbers, the pedigree, the swagger, and the marketability. He even had Deion Sanders, the ultimate showman in football history, sitting next to him, cameras flashing, waiting for the moment when Shedeur's name would be called early. But it never happened. Team after team passed on him. Some general managers whispered about mechanics, others pointed vaguely at off-field concerns, but insiders knew the real conversations were about persona. By the time pick number 147 rolled around, and the Cleveland Browns finally took Shedeur Sanders, the damage was done. The narrative had shifted from top 10 prospect to risky project, and that shift carried financial consequences, reputational consequences, and perhaps even long-term career ones. And yet, when the cameras finally caught Shedeur's reaction, it wasn't bitterness or rage. It was calm. It was composed. It was a quiet thank you to God. For Johnny Manziel, who remembers his own draft day wait, who remembers the sweating, the squirming, the weight of judgment crushing down, that composure meant everything. He admitted on his podcast, "I don't think I could have handled it the way he did." And coming from Manziel, that's significant, because Manziel didn't just live the draft day tension. He lived the fallout of a league that didn't trust who he was as a person, not just a player. When he praised Shedeur, it wasn't empty flattery, it was empathy forged in fire. On the latest Glory Days episode, Manziel didn't mince words. "Honestly, he can come out and win the job," he said. "The kid works, he's got the tools. But some teams don't want to deal with guys who don't just nod along. They want someone quiet. They want a yes man." That statement slices right to the heart of an unspoken NFL standard that has haunted outspoken players for decades. Sit down, shut up, play ball. Personality is fine, but only in controlled doses, and only when it doesn't threaten traditional hierarchies. Manziel went further, pointing out the fine line between what teams claim to value and what they actually reward. In his words, organizations often prefer the Geno Smith type, quiet, humble, careful not to rock the boat. That wasn't an attack on Geno Smith as a player. It was an attack on a system that punishes quarterbacks who don't fit a narrow cultural mold. The irony here is glaring. Johnny Manziel was once considered the distraction, the brash outsider, the wild card. Now he's the one pointing out that maybe the real issue is how teams decide who gets labeled a problem in the first place. Because it's not always about performance, it's often about image. And for Shedeur Sanders, the image of a confident, polished, vocal young leader may have been enough to scare off half the league. Think about the history. The NFL doesn't just draft arms and accuracy. It drafts character, culture, leadership, fit. And too often, that fit comes wrapped in invisible, racially code. Let's zoom out for a second and ask the hard question. Why are we still having this conversation in 2025? Why are confident, outspoken black quarterbacks still forced to shrink themselves in order to be accepted? Because when you strip away the scouting reports and the draft day excuses, it's clear this wasn't about Shedeur Sanders' throwing motion or his ability to read defenses. This was about image, perception, and coded expectations that have haunted the league for decades. Shedeur Sanders is not some fringe practice squad hopeful. He's not an unpolished athlete trying to convert to a new position. He's a quarterback with NFL bloodlines, elite production, and leadership skills that check every box. And yet he slid 4 rounds lower than projections suggested. Not because of talent, but because he dared to carry himself like he belonged. That's a culture problem. The NFL has long sold the myth of the humble, silent leader, the guy who takes the hits, keeps his head down, and never questions the hierarchy. But what happens when leadership doesn't look like that? What happens when leadership comes with diamonds, with cameras, with swagger, and with self-belief that doesn't fit the mold? For decades, that version of leadership has been treated with suspicion when it comes from black quarterbacks. Shedeur Sanders grew up being told he was great. He trained like it, studied like it, and carried himself like it. And instead of being rewarded for that, he was punished. Teams labeled him too polished, too brand-focused, too confident. Translation: he didn't fit their idea of submissive humility. And that's the reality Johnny Manziel pointed out. When he was loud and brash at Texas A&M, he was called electric, a showman must-see TV. When Shedeur carries himself with calm confidence, he's called arrogant or flashy. The double standard is undeniable. And for Manziel to say it publicly matters. Because he lived through being branded a problem child. And he can see how the narrative shifts when the quarterback in question is black. His defense of Shedeur Sanders is more than just solidarity. It's a spotlight on the NFL's unspoken rulebook. Think about how many black quarterbacks have been miscast by perception. Cam Newton's celebrations were called excessive. Lamar Jackson was told he should play wide receiver. Jameis Winston's dancing became a headline about focus. The pattern repeats endlessly. Confidence gets coded as arrogance. Joy gets coded as distraction. Swagger gets coded as selfishness. And Shedeur Sanders is the latest to carry that weight. But here's where the story takes a sharp turn. Shedeur didn't enter a franchise with a locked-in starter. He didn't land behind a Pro Bowler with a $200 million contract. He landed in Cleveland, where the quarterback room is one of the most unpredictable in football. That chaos is his opportunity. Kenny Pickett is on a short leash. Dylan Gabriel is talented but raw. Joe Flacco is a veteran stopgap. And Shedeur is the wild card. In that mix, the most dangerous player is the one with nothing to lose. And that's Shedeur. Reports already suggest his work ethic is winning people over. He's staying late, grinding film, and elevating the players around him. That's not hype. That's culture change. The NFL is obsessed with talent. But in reality, what players respect most is grind. Teammates respect the guy who treats every rep like it's the fourth quarter of a playoff game. That's the version of Shedeur that's showing up. And it's forcing the Browns to take notice, whether the front office planned for it or not. Because here's the truth. Depth charts are written in pencil, not ink. If Sanders keeps stacking practices where he impresses teammates and coaches, the narrative around him will flip faster than anyone expects. That's why Johnny Manziel's words hit so hard. He's not just defending Sanders. He's warning the NFL, if this kid succeeds, you'll have to answer for how badly you misread him. And the league has a lot to answer for. How many stars were overlooked because they didn't fit someone else's image of humble? How many leaders were dismissed because they were too confident, too vocal, too visible? And how many more can the NFL afford to miss before fans and players stop trusting the system? If Shedeur wins a job in Cleveland, that reckoning arrives sooner than later. Let's also talk about the generational shift. Football is changing. College athletes now grow up in the NIL era. They're brands before they're professionals. They understand marketing, image, and media in ways past generations didn't. Shedeur Sanders is the poster child for that shift. He came into the league already marketable, already recognizable, already a star. For older NFL executives, that's intimidating. For younger players, that's inspiring. The league is at a crossroads between an old culture that wants silent